Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I am excited to dive into practice trends and numbers. But before I do that, I want to remind you guys that Dr. Kuba and I will be out at the Big Country Dental Roundup event. It's a CE event where you can get up to 5 CE credits. It's a one-day event out in Abilene, Texas. It is free to you guys, and Dr. Kuba and I will be one of the speakers in the set there, and so I'd encourage you to check it out. It is on April 14th. Again, one day, free to you. You can RSVP and register to attend at dentalcompliance.com//Abilene. So check us out there. Now, let's dive into the content for today. I wanted to spend an episode talking about practice trends and numbers. You may have been hearing a theme, especially in these last few episodes with Dr. Kuba and myself. I like to view the practice as an investment. So when we look at the practice as an investment, it's a tool for building wealth, for building a certain lifestyle, for providing for staff members, for providing services to a community. It is an investment. And when we view the practice as an investment, and what I always say is a dental practice is the best investment that you can make, the returns on it are consistently strong. And so I would encourage you guys to really think about, if you haven't thought like this before, think about your dental practice as an investment. Treat it like it is your best investment. And when you start thinking of it that way, you naturally become more interested in studying the trends of the practice. So I want to talk today about what trends are important and what you can evaluate on an ongoing basis. So I talk about practice numbers in this way. There's a million different ways that you can slice the numbers. So it's kind of like I call it a big pie, or an onion, if you will. And depending upon which way we slice that onion, we're going to see different layers. And when we slice the onion differently and then we put it all back together, we have a good full picture of what's going on in the practice. And so some of the numbers or trends that I'm going to ask you to evaluate today, I like to look at those numbers separately and evaluate them kind of individually. But then when we combine it with the other pieces of the puzzle, we develop a full picture of what's going on in the practice. So we'll dive into a few main categories today. I'm going to start with the biggest, broadest topics and the things that I think as a member of a practice or as the owner of a practice that you would have the easiest time finding this information. There is a report at the end of every day that you can run in your practice software called the day sheet. Many practice softwares have the ability to customize these day sheets, but honestly, even if you don't customize, the information that you get on these day sheets is really valuable information. Now, when we print a day sheet, we do get some great information or some tools from those numbers to be able to evaluate how the practice is doing. But that is a very microscopic view. Anybody who's worked in the dental field for any period of time knows that there's an ebb and flow. There's certain days of the week in your practice that are more productive, and there are sometimes days that are less productive depending upon the day of the week, time of the year, etc. So we don't want to spend too much time, energy, and attention looking microscopically at each and every day. Now, each day builds to create a good month and to create a good quarter and a year, etc. So the day is important, but it's not as important when it comes to evaluating trends. What printing the day sheet does and looking at that day sheet allows you to evaluate, first of all, how much did we produce today? how much came in the way of collections. And so that's taking your credit card payments, your check payments, your any kind of payment that was logged in the system, even EFT payments, and it puts it into a day sheet. And usually there's a deposit slip that's printed with that day sheet so that you can balance out those deposits with your merchant services, with your bank account, etc. Now, so it helps you to kind of rectify how much did we collect today, how much did we produce, how much of the production did we collect? So if we produced $5,000 today, did we only collect $2,000? And if so, why did we only collect $2,000? So days that should stand out to you are either days that we collected over what we produced, which can happen, especially when we have a big surge of insurance checks or payments. It can throw our collections over for that day. But also we want to look at the days that we're under collections or under production in collection and figure out why. Did we not collect from somebody? Did we collect from somebody and fail to put that collection in the ledger and therefore it's not showing up on the day sheet? Also, an important number to evaluate on the day sheet is how many write-offs you had. Some reports, I'm thinking of Dentrix in this particular moment, calls it adjustments. Adjustments, write-offs, you know what I'm talking about. These are the things that we've adjusted off or on to accounts. So why would we adjust off? It can be an insurance adjustment that we made when entering insurance payments. It could be a provider discount that we've given. Oh, this was, Dr. Jones's stepmother, and so we did it for half price. It can be things that needed to be rectified if we input a payment incorrectly, and so now we're needing to kind of make that adjustment. If we wrote off something incorrectly, and now we're needing to adjust that. So those are corrections that are occurring. And I think those are important to look at. You should have a pretty repetitive trend when it comes to adjustments or write-offs. Things that should stand out are adjustments that are way over or way under what you normally do. Now, let's say this is the first time that you're really looking at adjustments. You want to determine, kind of go back and look at each day sheet for the last month. What's our typical adjustment amount? Now, if we look at that and we're like, oh, it's about $500 every day, and we're like, okay, great, I checked it, it's consistent. I would say if you haven't looked into adjustments before, it is worth looking carefully into adjustments. Now, softwares allow you to look at those adjustments in detail. Programs like Dentrix will break it down into types of adjustments, and you can look more closely. EagleSoft breaks it into adjustments by patient. Even newer softwares, the online softwares have reports where you can pull an adjustment summary report or an adjustments / credits report, which is another title for it. So it's worth looking into those and making sure that those are adjustments that, number one, you know about and you agree with. Things that should stand out from an adjustment standpoint is when you're looking at those adjustments, and let's say you audit a few. Like, okay, I've got $500 in adjustments and that came from 10 different accounts. So let me look at 3 of those accounts, and do those adjustments make sense? So things that stand out to me that don't make sense, and things that our radar should go up and we should dig a little bit deeper in, are adjustments that were written off after an insurance check came in. Why would we be concerned about that? So let's say we did kind of an initial write-off when we submitted that claim. Our software went ahead and automatically estimated the write-off. And then when the insurance check comes in, we did an additional write-off. Now, it may not be wrong. It just begs the question, why was our original estimate wrong on the write-offs? Is there something set up incorrectly in our software? Are we writing off something that we shouldn't be writing off? And this is where it really takes you collaborating with your insurance coordinator to make sure, are we writing off things that we really should be writing off? EOBs have gotten increasingly more complex for your team members to investigate and to write off properly. Even as an in-network provider, there are oftentimes little ways that they try to trick you. I'll give you an example. If you receive an EOB, and this will be for the state of Texas, there are multiple states that have protection in place for providers, dental providers. But in the state of Texas, when we submit to insurance for nitrous, and nitrous is not covered by that insurance company, what they cannot do is tell you what price you are allowed to charge for nitrous. In the state of Texas, when insurance does not cover something, they're not putting any money towards nitrous, then you are allowed to charge your full fee. Now, on that EOB, it may clearly say nitrous, and you charge, let's say, $100 for it, and it might say negotiated rate, $39. And then you look over to what the patient owes, that column, and it'll show $39 for nitrous. Well, we didn't anticipate that in the original estimate and claim. What we anticipated is that insurance was going to pay $0 towards nitrous, and we charged our full fee. So we collected from the patient the full $100 for nitrous. But when that EOB comes back in, and our sweet little insurance lady that's doing her best says, okay, look, I see the adjustments that I'm supposed to write off for this patient. And she writes off that $61. Well, now all of a sudden, this person has a $61 credit on their account. And that doesn't make sense, right? Because ultimately, we should be allowed to charge the full fee for things that insurance doesn't cover. So that is an adjustment that if you spot checked that, you would go, ooh, let me just kind of check that with the EOB. Sweet Sally, my insurance coordinator, didn't realize that she's not supposed to write off this $61. The patient actually does not have a credit. They have a $0 balance. We estimated correctly. We just wrote off an additional amount that we shouldn't have written off. So spot checking those adjustments, you find little mistakes like that. And $61 doesn't sound like much, but $61 times 100 patients that month is a pretty substantial loss for the practice. And again, I think it's worth your time and attention doing a few spot checks on those adjustments periodically. Or if you're like, I don't have the time for that, then rope in somebody who you do trust on your team to audit a few EOBs each month and see how things are looking, or to actually pull the adjustment report and do some auditing on that side of things. So the day sheet is used. Don't use it to kind of evaluate trends other than on the financial piece of things. We want to make sure that we're collecting pretty close to what we produce. It won't always be accurate or close. It kind of depends on what occurred that day, but we want to make sure that we've got some consistency in our collections, and then we want to double check our adjustments. Now, that same day sheet is what shows at the end of the month. So the same numbers and all of that are on there each day, we have the opportunity to look at that at the end of month. Now, we look at end of month a little bit differently because it is a bigger slice of the pie. We can see a little bit more information. So I want to talk about some of the things that you should look for on your end of month report. Number one, of course, you want to look at your production. You want to look at your collections. Did we collect close to what we produce? Keep in mind, as you probably know, collections can be a little bit cyclical in nature. If in January we produced $100,000, but in February the doctor was out for a week and we ended up only working 3 weeks out of that month and we produced only $70,000, we may have a production at the end of that month on the monthly sheet. We may have a production of $70,000, but we may have a collection of $100,000. And you're thinking, how in the world did that happen? Well, we had a great January and we're still collecting on some insurance payments from January that makes it look like we over collected in February. We didn't over collect, but it may throw things off if we have a high month right next to a low month. It may not look super consistent, but you still want to look at that. Did we collect close to what we produced or over what we produced? If we were significantly under in collections, why. What was the reason for that? And I would do some digging in that. So we want to look at collections, production. We also want to look at adjustments here. So this is where we get a bigger picture of how much on a monthly basis we are adjusting onto accounts or off accounts. And again, same things go. I would do a few audits as you look at that adjustment report and make sure that all of the adjustments make sense. I am usually not concerned about adjustments as long as it's around the same percentage. So when you look at adjustments, don't just look at the dollar amount. Go ahead and figure out the percentage of adjustment. If you produced $100,000 and you adjusted off $10,000, then ultimately that's a 10% adjustment. Is every month a 10% adjustment, or was that an anomaly and a weird month? So if every month is, 8%, 9%, 10%, 11%, okay, you're in the same range each month and there's nothing that's standing out. But if you've got a 10% adjustment month and then a 2%, 3%, 1%, then that 10% should stand out and we should do some digging in that. Okay, the next number from a monthly standpoint that I really like to look at is the number of patients seen per month. What I really would encourage you to do is not only look at the number of patients seen that month, but I also would encourage you to look at the same exact month from the previous year. So, okay, we just finished February, or March now. Gosh, I still can't believe it's April. We just finished March, and we saw 350 patients in our practice this month. Each monthly day-end sheet should show you how many patients were seen in your practice. If that's not showing up on your month-end reports, check with your software company. Make sure you can get that loaded onto your reports. So you want to see how many patients that you saw in that particular month, and then you want to compare it to the year before that. Okay, March 2023, we saw 350 patients. March of 2022, we saw 370. Okay, so we saw 20 patients more the year before. Anytime we compare to the year before and we saw less patients in the same exact month from the year before, we just need to pause and think about it. Like 20 patients, that's not that big of a deal. And you're right, it still is within a normal range. However, if you are gaining new patients every month, it should be very rare that when you compare to the same month from the previous year, that your patients seen went down, because you've had 12 months of, let's say, 20 new patients per month. We should not only be seeing the exact same, we should be seeing 20 patients more in the month the very next year. If you're not seeing that, it just requires you to ask a few questions. Did we have to shut down some hygiene days due to a hygienist that was out? Did the doctor take a vacation? Did we have some, weird weather stuff that happened that caused us to shut down or reschedule patients? Did we have a wave of flu that hit our area and we just had a ton of sick patients? It's fine to have a lower month as long as we know why we saw fewer patients. Don't just look at that and assume that everything is okay. So you look at the patient seen, you compare it to the previous year. Did we go up? Did we go down? If we went down, why? Then after that, every report from a month-end standpoint should have a production per visit or a production per patient. Big tip of the day, this is my favorite number out of all of them, because when we look at that production per patient, it to me gives us the strongest litmus test of how the practice is doing. So if, let's say we hit the end of March, we saw 350 patients, compared to last year, we saw 370. We're down in patients. Let's dig into that and figure out why. But we produced per patient $300 per patient this year, as opposed to $270 per patient last year. So wow, we actually came out almost the same in production. How can that be? Well, we were more productive per patient this month. So first of all, my mind immediately goes, gosh, can you imagine that $300 per patient times the 370 patients that you saw last year? If we would have seen 20 more patients at $300 a patient, that's a substantial loss that the practice had. But I also asked the question, how did we produce $30 more per patient this year as opposed to last year? So things that can impact productivity per patient or production per patient. Number one, treatment. So treatment in any practice is normally our revenue booster. So did we see more treatment this month as opposed to March of last year? Were there certain types of procedures that boosted us? Maybe we had one big case. We had a big implant case that hit this month, and we didn't have anything like that last March. Okay, there we go. That helps to account for where that productivity came from. Were we more productive in our hygiene department? Did we see more scalings? Did we have more patients accept fluoride? Ultimately, were our hygienists more productive this year as opposed to last year? When I ask all of these questions, your software has all the answers. So I'm giving you a big picture of what you need to ask and what can influence that. You will have to go and do the digging. And again, your software has the reports that you need to find the answers to that. Maybe we had a fee increase. So maybe last year we were on our 2022 fee schedule, and this year we're on our 2023 fee schedule, which was a 5% increase. So that may account for some of that production per patient. Ultimately, we should be concerned if that production per patient is going down. So again, the same rule applies. If I look at my production this March and it's 270 per patient, and then I scroll back to March of 2022 and it was 300 per patient, we should be asking why. What's dragging our production down? Are we, not closing a lot of treatment and we're just relying on our hygienists to produce for us? Did we have a couple of big cases fall off our schedule and therefore it kind of tanked our numbers? You can pull, for March of 2022, you can pull exactly how many of each type of procedure you did. And you can pull the same report for 2023 and just you compare. Oh, here we go. We did 5 crowns in 2022 and we did 3 crowns in 2023. We did 1 implant in 2022. We did 0 in 2023. We did 200 fillings in 2022 and we did 220 in 2023. So wow, we did a lot more fillings, but fillings are not as productive as some of those higher producing things. For our specialty clients, ortho, how many phase 2s did we sign up? How many phase 1s? Wow, we were in March of 2022, we were 60% phase 2 and 40% phase 1. In 2023, we were 50-50. And so that means our production per patient is going to be down. So those are all the questions you want to ask when it comes to production per patient. I feel like when we can constantly be growing in our production per patient, it covers a multitude of deficiencies, right? So we can produce more per patient and ultimately see fewer patients. How do we do that? That's for you and your team to figure out, right? Do we need to drop an insurance plan to kind of boost our productivity up? Do we need to really work on our treatment acceptance with some of our higher dollar procedures? Are we marketing to the right group? Wow, we got more phase 1s this March. Maybe it's tied to our marketing efforts. What can we do to target more of that middle school age population? Let's invest in some time and energy into thinking about that. Oral surgery, endo, perio. Did you start getting a lot of referrals from a general dentist that sends you pardon me, but sends you all the crap cases, the crap patients that really aren't interested in doing anything. They're interested in the cheapest thing and nobody's signing up. Nobody's following through. Okay, how can you get some better referral sources under your belt that understand what you're capable of and send you patients that are primed and ready? Do you need to be able to go in and do some training with those referral offices so that they know how to set the patient up and get them prepared? Do they know does the general office know your procedures and your routine so that they're accurately preparing the patient for what they're going to experience in your consultation? Do you offer free consultations? Is that driving the wrong kind of patient into your practice? All of these questions can be evaluated from one number, production per patient. If it's going up, great. Everything's golden. You don't have to worry about anything. If the production per patient is going down, that is when you really need to dig in and figure out what's going on. Okay, this is all still month-end reports, by the way. So we talked about collections. You want to check that and do the math to figure out your collections percentage. I did not say that a few minutes ago. If you produced 100,000 and you collected 98,000, then you've obviously got a 98% collection rate. So we don't just want to look at the collection number. We want to look at the collection percentage. You want to consistently, in most industries, not all specialties run this way, but in most practices, you want to have 98% collections. And if it's not that, why? What are we doing wrong? What do we need to figure out? So production, collections, collection percentage, number of patients seen, and production per patient. And then, of course, I didn't mention you also want to look at adjustments and adjustment percentage and see if that's consistent. The other thing, of course, that you want to look at each month is your new patient numbers. To take it a step further, so you want to look, do we have the same new patients as last year? How do new patients compare to the month before and the month after? Are we trending down? Are we trending up? And then, of course, that's when the homework begins. If we're trending down, why? What's dropped? Did our referral sources drop? Did we used to get internal referrals and now we're not getting those? Did we used to have a lot of Google or internet referrals and now we're not getting any? Is there something going on with our SEO or our online ads? There's, again, a million different ways that finding this decrease should lead to action of some sort and figuring out why it's down. But an additional thing that I would encourage you to do is to actually look at how productive your new patients are. So not only how many new patients did we get? So, okay, March 2023, I got 30 new patients. When I look back at March 2022, I had 26. So yay, we got four more new patients this year than last year. But wow, my production from those new patients is actually less. So in March of 2022, I produced $50,000 from those 26 new patients. But in 2023, I got 30 new patients and I only produced $24,000. So is that random? I just happened to have a month with new patients that didn't have a lot of treatment needs and therefore we produced less out of those. Did I have the wrong kind of people? Meaning, no, I diagnosed just as much out of those new patients, but the acceptance was down. Okay, well then why was the acceptance down? And you dig into that. So not only looking at your new patient numbers, did I have as much as last year and how does it compare to the 2 months on either side of me? So if I'm evaluating March, what did February's new patients look like and what are April's new patients currently looking like? And then also, one other additional thing that I'll tell you to look at with new patients, in addition to how productive they were, I would take a quick glance at your schedule and figure out the next time that you have available for a new patient to get in. So oftentimes we can have a decrease in new patients if they have to wait a long time to get into your practice. So usually I say if you have an opening available for a new patient within a 2-week period of time, you're good. If they have to wait any longer than 2 weeks, we run the risk of losing them to another practice or to a competitor. So when you're looking at that new patient number on your end of month, go ahead and just take a minute to glance through the schedule. When is the first availability for a new patient to get in my practice? And then if it is past 2 weeks, you need to troubleshoot with your team and figure out how you can change that. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about with new patients in particular is you want to spend some time thinking about how these new patients are being retained in the practice. So not only did they schedule for treatment, but do I have them scheduled for some type of retention visit? So if in, let's say ortho, for example, they didn't need any treatment, they weren't ready to get started, do we have them scheduled back for their recall visit, for their checkup, whatever you call it in your practice, their growth and development? Are they scheduled back or did they not schedule? Okay, that's a potential problem if we didn't schedule. For our general pedo practices, okay, that new patient came in, they didn't need any treatment. Are they scheduled for their recall visit or their next hygiene visit? No, they're not. We run the risk. So do a spot check on your list of new patients and see, does it look like we're retaining those new patients? It's great to get new patients, but it's all for naught if we're not retaining them. So when you're looking at that month-end report, you're going to have to make a mental note to yourself. Yes, compare it against the previous year. Are we going up or down? Look at the month before, look at the month after. Are we on trend for those months? But also, what is the value of my new patient? Am I getting the right kind of new patient? And then also, are they currently retained in the practice? And those are the things that you want to look at. Okay, I've given you a lot just from the day sheet and from the month-end report. I am going to do an additional segment that does a little bit more of a deep dive into some more complex analysis that you can do in your practice. But honestly, even if you just started with these reports from a month-end perspective, you're not only looking at production collections, adjustments, and the percentages associated, you're looking at the number of patients that you saw, you're looking at the production per patient, and you're looking at the new patient numbers. But you're also comparing that. That's the key thing. We cannot evaluate trends without going backwards and looking at how it used to be. That gives us perspective. The other two reports that will show, it depends on your program, but should show on your month end is your patient accounts receivable and your insurance receivables. So those are two additional things that I would definitely encourage you to look at on a monthly basis to evaluate, are we trending up or trending down? We'll dig into a little bit more complexity with those numbers in the next episode. Hopefully this gives you some tools to get started. Please, if nothing else, start taking a look at those day sheets and double checking them. Start taking a look at those month-end reports. Build in a system for evaluating your practice because it is your best investment. So it is worth watching how your investment is working for you, because when it's not, or when it's on a decline, there are always 100% of the time, there are always things that you can do to impact those numbers and reverse negative trends. So get into your software, figure out how to pull those reports, or get a lovely team member to pull those reports for you, and then start digging in. I do think it'll become something that you enjoy to see, especially when the practice is doing well. And again, when it's not doing well, it'll give you your next steps and your homework to get things turned in the right direction. Good luck, and thanks for listening. Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone. But we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.